This is Free Range with Von Miller, the podcast where I step outside the lines and I take you with me. Each week, we're talking everything, from the biggest stories around the league to the biggest stories off the field. This isn't your average sports podcast. This is game meets culture, locker room meets living room, and no topic is off limits. So if you're into good conversations that ruffle a few feathers, join me every Wednesday and follow Free Range with Von Miller everywhere you get your podcast.
Campaign promises kept. President Trump drains the swamp as light exposes the hidden darkness. By Eternal Affairs Media. Thank you for subscribing, liking, and sharing. The storm arrives. In an era of engineered deceit and bureaucratic decay, one man's vow has turned into a national reckoning. President Donald J. Trump, now in his second act on the world stage, has done what few dared imagine. The swamp is not merely being drained, it's being exposed. Years after his first term ignited the call for accountability, Trump has returned stronger, flanked by an unexpected alliance of reformers, including Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as the newly appointed head of Health and Human Services, HHS. Together, they have launched the Make America Healthy Again (MAHA) initiative, an unprecedented campaign uniting medical transparency with government reform. Their promise, to dismantle the web of collusion between big pharma, regulatory agencies, and political elites that has festered for generations. It feels not only political but prophetic, echoing what spiritual voices like Amanda Grace, Julie Green, Robin D. Bullock, and Timothy Dixon foresaw, that a hidden system of power would face divine exposure. Nothing can stop what is coming, Green declared again this autumn, as new waves of resignations, investigations, and declassifications surged through Washington. The shape of the swamp. The swamp has always symbolized more than mere corruption. It's an ecosystem of control, spanning the alphabet agencies, media conglomerates, and corporate lobbyists who have insulated themselves from accountability. Under Trump's second administration, that ecosystem has been hit by a controlled detonation. Over 220,000 federal employees have resigned, retired early, or faced internal reviews since January 2025. At the DOJ, nearly a third of upper-level leadership has been replaced after an exhaustive internal audit revealed improper case handling and hidden conflicts of interest. The EPA and FDA are undergoing simultaneous restructurings, prompted by whistleblowers who revealed decades of chemical safety data manipulation and pandemic-era malpractice. For the first time in U.S. history, real-time disclosure of agency funding ties to private corporations is being published through the DOJ Transparency Portal, a signature policy of Elon Musk's short-lived but high-impact Department of Government Efficiency. Trump's blunt assessment at his October rally still rings through the chambers of power. They thought they could hide forever. But sunlight is pouring in. The implosion of the bureaucracy. What mainstream outlets call staff churn, insiders call the purge of the permanent class. The exodus of agency heads, inspectors, and mid-level operatives hasn't been random. It's the outcome of targeted reviews uncovering intertwined financial networks that have distorted everything from environmental policy to vaccine regulation.
This is Free Range with Von Miller, the podcast where I step outside the lines and I take you with me. Each week, we're talking everything, from the biggest stories around the league to the biggest stories off the field. This isn't your average sports podcast. This is game meets culture, locker room meets living room, and no topic is off limits. So if you're into good conversations that ruffle a few feathers, join me every Wednesday and follow Free Range with Von Miller everywhere you get your podcast.
Multiple top figures within the CDC and NIH have faced congressional subpoenas. The discovery of unreported conflicts between vaccine advisory board members and pharmaceutical boards sent aftershocks through public health circles, confirming the long-standing suspicion that science had been repurposed as political theater. MAHA's investigations, led by RFK Jr.'s task force, have cracked open an entire architecture of revolving door profit. Their report released in September revealed 569 cases where regulatory decisions benefited companies directly tied to former or current federal officials. The swamp, it turns out, wasn't metaphorical, it was ledger deep. Exposures and justice. Across Washington, a slow-forming avalanche of accountability has taken shape. Former DOJ officials implicated in politically motivated prosecutions are being investigated by independent commissions. High-profile figures tied to foreign-funded influence operations have stepped down quietly, sometimes vanishing from public life altogether. SEC data leaks have traced billions in off-book campaign consulting contracts back to NGOs fronting for overseas interests. In the prophetic parallel, this cascade of exposure fulfills the words repeated by Amanda Grace through 2024 and 2025, that God's hand would peel back the veil, revealing corruption embedded in every level of leadership. Those who mocked prophetic warnings now watch with disbelief as indictments, resignations, and sealed investigations pile up like dominoes under divine timing. The battle of narratives. Predictably, establishment media has framed these developments not as revelation but as chaos. They cry witch hunt while ignoring the magnitude of evidence emerging from FOIA releases and whistleblower testimony. Meanwhile, independent reporters and conservative networks are documenting what the mainstream refuses to touch: the collapse of the old order. Outlets like Real America News and the Patriot Ledger have broadcast internal documents revealing cross-agency censorship collusion, proof that the misinformation apparatus dismantled in February 2025 had quietly extended into nearly every digital platform. Trump's supporters call it the year of unveiling. His critics call it persecution. But something undeniable is happening: the architecture of secrecy is fracturing, and the American public, reawakened, is demanding light. The prophetic undercurrent. This movement extends beyond politics. Prophets and pastors across the country describe it as a spiritual rift: light versus deception, truth versus institutional idolatry. Julie Green proclaimed in her latest broadcast, "The exposure will shake nations. God is not reforming Babylon, he's collapsing it." Robin D. Bullock echoed the same sentiment, noting that the war for America's soul is happening both in Congress and in Heaven's court, where truth is being weighed. To millions of Americans, these prophecies no longer sound abstract, they're the nightly news. Reform in action. Beyond rhetoric, Trump's second-term agenda has fused populist and reformist energy. The Federal Employment Transparency Act, passed May 2025, mandates that any official discovered maintaining foreign financial ties be immediately suspended pending public disclosure. The newly expanded Inspector General Council cross-audits all major federal contracts, an effort projected to save taxpayers $480 billion by 2027. Buy American, Heal American, the spiritual successor to his earlier executive order, now extends to medical manufacturing, incentivizing U.S.-made pharmaceuticals and banning government procurement of drugs from firms under federal investigation. In other words, draining the swamp has matured from a slogan into a structural doctrine. A nation at the crossroads. 2025 will be remembered as the year the veil tore. It's messy, historic, and providential. For the first time, truth and power face each other in the open court of public scrutiny. Citizens who once despaired now mobilize through local councils, health freedom coalitions, and faith-driven reform groups. The awakening is contagious. Trump's allies call it divine timing. His detractors call it dangerous populism. But either way, it's transforming the republic. And as prophetic voices continue to affirm, this exposure cannot be stopped, because it isn't merely political revolution, it's moral restoration. The final word. Every resignation, every declassified document, every public confession is a signal: the swamp is losing oxygen. What began as one man's campaign promise has evolved into a spiritual revival of truth. The establishment trembles not because of politics, but because its secrets are now public. Trump once said in 2016, "We are transferring power back to you, the people." 9 years later, with God's justice moving like a storm and light cutting through the fog of deceit, that promise is finally being fulfilled. Nothing can stop what's coming. Nothing.
Spreadsheets, clunky software, 100 different logins, just to run your business?
There's a better way. Odoo. One simple, connected platform that handles sales, inventory, accounting, and more, so you can focus on growing, not juggling. Make the switch today at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com.